Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny De Lillo. I'm delighted to be joined by Joey with his fantastic film, My First Native American Boyfriend. But for those that haven't seen it, let's take a good clip.
Seriously though, can I ask you a question?
Okay.
Okay. When I was 5 years old, my mother dressed me up like Pocahontas, like from the Disney movie. And now I'm dating a Native American guy. That's a little weird, right?
I mean, it's a problematic movie for sure, but you were 5. It's fine.
Okay. Okay, good.
Joey, I'm really delighted we're doing this in person. Thank you for bringing your film to us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I had such a great experience at the festival, and I'm glad that a bunch of folks saw my weird short.
We love your weird short. I mean, I honestly thought it was fantastic. I just have got so many questions. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis of your film.
So a brief synopsis of the film is our main character, Johnny, just recently entered a new relationship with a woman named Emily. And Johnny's Native American, and this is Emily's first Native American boyfriend. And she's basically just using this opportunity to apologize for every microaggression she has ever done against Native people.
I mean, it's a brilliant short, and it's a short, but I really just love their relationship and their camaraderie and their conversation. Where did the inspiration come for you in creating this particular story?
The inspiration for this short comes from, I was dating a woman a few years ago, and a few weeks into the relationship, at around 3 a.m. on a Saturday, she shook me awake with a look of just absolute concern in her eyes to tell me that when she was 5 years old, her mom dressed her up like Pocahontas from the Disney movie, and now she was dating a Native American guy, and she felt really weird and had to apologize about it.
Oh,
and
my
of
goodness.
course, my response was like, it's fine, go back to bed. But I feel like that sort of experience is not uncommon in interracial relationships. I'm enrolled Cowlitz, I'm a Native American man, and that's something that I relate to a lot of my just Native friends and BIPOC friends just in the world about weird dating experiences that we've had. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of take all those together and cram them into a ball and then make a short film out of them.
I mean, listen, you could have taken it many different ways, but you obviously put it into this, style of comedy and brought the conversation into a film. What was, when you sort of heard that, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go and take this context and turn it into a film. Did you always kind of know you wanted to sort of bring it into this sort of, light comedy element to it as well?
Yeah, I mean, it took me a few years before I really realized, oh, that's a good thing to make a short about. It wasn't immediately after it happened. I was just like, wait, before I go back to bed, let me write this down. But yeah, I'm a comedy writer by trade. I came up through the Los Angeles comedy scene, and so comedy is just kind of the language with which I speak in my writing. So I feel like anything that I make is probably going to have some tinge of comedy to it. So, me kind of shining a light on this particular weird instance, of course, I'm going to cram it full of jokes.
Yeah, well, listen, let me tell you something, because where did you film it, by the way?
I filmed it in, I forget the name of it, but kind of a canyon in North Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, have I been there? But
yeah,
no,
probably. Yeah.
But I love that this whole kind of conversation was experienced in this in this canyon. They were having this conversation. Now, coming from a comedy background, how do you bringing your actors together? I loved the way they worked off each other. It was really, really fun to watch. How do you kind of work with them as a director? Do you kind of go the sort of kind of improvisation where they kind of articulate how they're going to orchestrate it, or are you quite hands-on?
So a lot of my original kind of creative base is sort of the Los Angeles sketch scene. I came up through places like the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, the Groundlings, Second City, and so a lot of my experience is working with actors in situations where it's maybe some improv, maybe some sticking to script. In this particular instance, I'd worked with Benny Wayne Soley, the actor who played Johnny a ton, and Kylie Brakeman I'd known from a lot of her works. And I knew that I could kind of rest on them to nail the punchlines and really, kind of make the jokes sing. There were some instances the first 30 seconds of the movie when they were having a conversation walking up the trail. I was just I don't know, have a date conversation until you land on this spot and then maybe get to the script. But I've also just, worked with actors in comedy so much that it's I kind of knew what like I wanted the emotional level of each line to be, and I knew kind of what point, and I knew kind of where I wanted the laughs to be. So a lot of it was just kind of like focusing the actors in those directions. And also, like I said, these are just like world-class acting talent. So there was a lot of like moments where like I didn't necessarily think that something was a joke in script, but in their delivery, they like nailed it or like emphasized something in a specific way. And I was like, oh, okay, good. Yeah, that's the laugh line there.
I love it. And what was kind of the hardest part of making this film?
The hardest part of making this film would be, you know, kind of the thing that we're all dealing with, which is high gas prices. No, just kidding, it's COVID. And yeah, I wrote the script in like 2020, early 2020. I had an animated short that went into festivals previous to this, and I really wanted to kind of stretch my legs in the live action space as a director. So I wrote this as just kind of like an easy thing that I could shoot, you know, in February 2020, and then, you know, things kind of went how they went. So I basically waited until the day that everybody that I wanted to work on it was fully vaccinated. And then it was like, okay, that's the date when we're going to shoot this thing. We shot it in May of this year, so just a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
And you know, it was like a very small crew. We were as safe as we could with everything. We made sure that everybody was like vaccinated and also tested before shooting. So I would say that like that was definitely part of it. And then you know, also there was just like the issues of dealing with kind of like a smaller crew. There was an instance where the producer was kind of in the parking lot of this hiking trail, kind of greeting people as they came on. Matt Mazzani, a really great producer, he was nominated for an Emmy for his work on Game of Thrones with Funny or Die, so he's just like a very legit guy. And he was meeting the actors and kind of sending them kind of further up the trail to where, you know, me, the DP, and a bunch of other folks were landed. And he basically was like, okay, yeah, just walk up this hiking trail like a mile and they'll be on your left. And the actors, Benny and Kylie, just kept walking for 3 miles.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, that's just due to us having a smaller crew and wanting to play it safe. And, you know, we eventually, like, you know, got them on the phone and steered them back in the right direction. But the sweat that they've got on their brows at the start of it is very much method acting. They really just finished a very long hike accidentally. But, yeah, so I would say, you know, the struggles with the smaller crew and then also just, you know, COVID delaying things were probably the main things to deal with.
Well, having such an amazing, you know, comedy background as you have, and you know, working and performing, you know, with some of the best, you know, organizations and groups and communities, you know, comedy is a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to write. I have tremendous respect for the skill. When you're making a film, you know, and you're kind of taking that context, like, do you have any kind of advice for, you know, for people out there that are looking to make kind of comedy, or any style that you particularly use when you're creating comedy in a film as opposed to, you know, in a live performance?
So I think that the best advice that I can give for somebody that wants to do comedy filmmaking is what you're getting work on as a comedian, as a writer, director, is your comedic instinct, your knowledge as to whether something is going to land or be funny or not. And my 2 cents is that I think that that's something that can only really be developed by just sucking for a long time. Like, I think that if you're interested in comedy filmmaking, you know, do a couple stand-up open mics, maybe take an improv class. You'll probably not be good right off the top, but by trying and failing and eventually succeeding, you'll start to learn like the types of things that you like to do that can reliably get laughs from an audience. And that just kind of builds your like gut instinct, and it kind of gets like, you know, punchlines and things like that just in your bones. So when you're writing a script or when you're directing actors, you just kind of get like a feel of like, oh yeah, this is gonna land if this goes this way, or oh, like this take was really good if you like, you know, do this thing at the end of it, that'll like make it, you know, 30% funnier or whatever. Or, hey, this is the joke. Maybe you're doing this extra thing that like is funny, but it kind of takes away from the main joke. So like play this part straight and then play this part real. And like I said, that's just something that you develop just by like sucking for a long time.
Yeah.
And then eventually, if you do it enough in front of a live audience, you start to kind of like pick up what works and what doesn't work for you.
That's just great advice for anyone. That's really good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, don't be afraid to be bad.
Yeah.
Because you're probably going to be bad at start, but like as you go, you'll get better and better, and like that's, you know, kind of it's like you're only going to get better by failing, you know?
Yeah, totally. Well, listen, I think it's also, you know, great that you know, told the kind of, I mean, as much as it was from a sort of comedy element, you know, there's a lot of, you know, microaggressions out there, and I think the style in which you delivered it was not only, informative, really entertaining, but something actually exists, unfortunately, in those microaggressions of today. Is this still kind of a, is this, from a perspective as a Native American, are you looking to do more content that kind of delves into your own heritage? Is that something you want to do, and what is next for you?
Yeah, I'm always excited about telling stories from my own kind of weird Native perspective. I'm enrolled Cowlitz, and I grew up in the Tulalip Reservation in Washington State, and sort of a lot of my kind of story is that growing up, I loved comedy, shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy and stuff like that. But because I didn't see any Native comedians on TV, I didn't think I was allowed to work in comedy. So instead I went to school to be like what to me felt like the next best thing, which was to be like a small market TV weather guy. And fortunately, a lot of my professors kind of pulled me aside and gave me like the right compliments to shift me toward actually moving to LA and pursuing comedy as a career. But so I'm always excited to create Native works because I want the next generation of Native creators, or just like funny Native kids on reservations who don't feel like they have a ton of options to maybe see my work and the work of my friends and my contemporaries and think to themselves that like they have the permission to dream that I didn't think that I had growing up. And then, I also think that we're in such an interesting part in like Native media where Rutherford Falls and Reservation Dogs are the first two shows in the history of United States television to be created by Native people, written by Native people, starring Native people, and about Native people. And those came out this year. TV has been a thing for almost 100 years.
Right.
So, I think that I like telling Indigenous stories and stories about like the things that I tell. Partly because it's just like fun to me to kind of see this stuff on screen, but also because I feel like, oh, we're finally getting these opportunities. I'm like making up for lost time.
Right.
And what's next for me, kind of on that note, is I'm a staff writer / consulting producer on a show called Spirit Rangers on Netflix. Comes out sometime in 2022, and it's the first ever U.S. animated series created by a Native person, the genius Shumash TV writer Chris Valencia, about a Native family with an all-Native writers' room. So, I'm working on that currently. That's super fun. I'm developing a couple of other shows with, some different networks and companies and things that I can't necessarily go into a ton of details about, but that I'm really excited about. And, other than that, I'm just excited to continue making like films about just like weird experiences my friends and I have had as Native people in 2021.
I just, love what you said about growing up in Washington State and hearing that you as a young boy and then now, you're working on these fantastic projects with some of the biggest network studios on being a staff writer. I'm so happy for you. Like, do you have to kind of pinch yourself at it as well of just on that journey, or do you feel like I finally getting to do the things that I want to do?
Yeah, it's something that I talk to a lot of my contemporaries about, how it's wild that we get to do this. It's wild that like for the first time in like mass media that like us Native folks are able to tell our stories in a contemporary and real way. And I'm so thankful that I get to do this and that I get to do this with so many great people who are doing so much great work. Yeah. And this is the start of us being able to do this, but I hope it's not the end, and I can't wait. I can't wait until 10 years from now when there are 100 Native TV shows on TV, when there are like dozens of features that are screening in festivals by like Native creators. Yeah. My hope is that this is a moment, but it's the start of a revolution of us finally being able to let our voices be heard.
I love that, and I'm so happy that you're one of those, leading the way on this great journey, and really wishing you best successes with the next projects that are coming up. But thank you for bringing your film to us. It was really spectacular, and keep going down the great route of comedy that you do, because it's really very good. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. This was super fun.